Go ahead.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to this urgent and significant webinar hosted by the Arab Organization for Human Rights in the UK. Today, we confront a deeply troubling reality, the role of the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. This role in the ongoing genocide in Gaza, what was presented as an aid organization has, according to credible evidence and testimony, become complicit in horrific crimes, turning aid distribution centers into death traps where civilians are starved, hunted, and killed in cold blood. Our organization has taken concrete legal steps to challenge this impunity and ensure justice. First, we submitted a Magnitsky sanctions request to the UK government. Second, a parallel sanctions request to the European Union. Third, a criminal complaint to the Armenian Prosecutor General, targeting David Papazian, an Armenian national and key figure in the foundation. And lastly, a formal complaint to the International Criminal Court calling for accountability in the context of genocide and crimes against humanity. These legal efforts are only possible and only meaningful with the support of courageous individuals and principled voices. We are honored to be joined today by a distinguished panel of speakers whose insight, experience, and testimony are vital to this fight for justice. Our speakers today include Mrs. Francesca Albanese, United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territories occupied since 1967, and Anthony Aguilar, former contractor with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, who will provide a rare and powerful eyewitness account from inside the organization. And we have Chris Smalls, American activist and organizer, recently returned from the Handala humanitarian mission. Dr. James Smith, British doctor who worked at Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in Gaza. Professor Stephen Zunes, renowned scholar for international security and foreign policy at the University of San Francisco. And also we have Dr. Junaid Sultan, recently returned from Gaza with first-hand knowledge of humanitarian crisis. In addition to Elisa Cozzolieri, American activist and communications director at Partners for Palestine, and lastly, Mr. Mohammed Jamil, director of the Arab Organization of Human Rights in the UK. We are grateful actually for having this distinguished panel of speakers today, and to serve the cause of truth, justice, and accountability in a time when Gaza's civilians are facing extermination through the most inhumane means. Above all, starvation and execution of the desperate in aid lines. We have a format today for each speaker to speak from 5 to 7 minutes, and later we have time for some comments by the speakers on what the other speakers said. Without further ado, let's give the floor to Mrs. Francesca Albanese to start with, and we can continue with the other speaker. Mrs. Francesca. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I would like to thank the Arab Organization for Human Rights in the UK for convening this timely discussion. My comments will be brief and will be twofold concerning the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Before even seeing it operational at work, I have deeply and profoundly contested the very essence of this organization, because it shouldn't be there. It shouldn't be operational. It shouldn't be active in a situation of emergency where a number of actors who are legitimately and with a track record, a proven record of capacity to deliver aid and relief have been dismantled. In that place, Israel shouldn't be operating. This is the first
Francesca, I think we cannot hear you very well, Francesca.
Israel
Hello?
nor the United States have any action to the United Nations should be delivering multilateral or non-organizations who have been operating in the Gaza was needed. This is hear me?
Francesca?
Can you hear me? Yes,
now
can
I
you hear me?
But at the beginning the line was not stable, so okay, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why. I might have a bad connection. Please let me know.
It's fine now. If you can repeat.
Okay, I removed the video. So I was saying I've been contesting the very existence of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation since the very beginning for two main reasons. First of all, there is a network of multilateral entities connected to the United Nations and a panoply of actors, non-governmental actors who have the legitimacy and capacity and track record of operating in situation of hostilities, of situation of disaster, whatever. Even if we didn't consider the specificity of Gaza, there is a multilateral sector that doesn't need Israel and the US to do what they're doing, to set up an ad hoc body to deliver aid. So on the one hand, Israel, with the support of the of the United States and others, have incapacitated UNRWA from functioning, and then they have replaced it with something that is completely against anything that is inspired by humanitarian action, meaning the principle of humanity, the principle of independence, neutrality, and no harm. The second thing is, after looking at how the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has operated over more than 3 months now, killing more than 1,200 people, while claiming to distribute food, it's clear that this entity, on the paper, without even looking, I mean, I'm really glad to hear from Anthony Aguilar, because he's been critical in bringing inside knowledge as a witness himself. But looking at it from outside, it's clear that in 3 months, this entity has gained a track record of a death trap rather than a humanitarian organization. And it operates more like a joint criminal endeavor than a humanitarian organization. And this is why in the discussions, it shouldn't even be contemplated any role for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. And this is where I blame member states who pretend to be in dialogue with Israel for the distribution of food, when Israel is the state that today is accused of using starvation as a weapon of war, which is abysmal. Meaning, even if what this crime means is that starvation cannot be used even against enemies. You cannot starve your enemies. But here, starvation is not just used against Hamas or whomever Israel is pretending to fight in Gaza, in the occupied Palestinian territory. Today, starvation is being used as a genocidal tool. Starvation is yet another tool for advancing the genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza, to convince them to leave voluntarily what remains of Gaza. And this is a reason why I do believe that sooner rather than later, there should be a judicial proceeding against the JHF and its executives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesca. And now, before we set some questions about this, we can give the floor to Mr. Anthony Aguilar. and I think has a lot to tell us about what's happening in Gaza. Please, Mr. Aguilar.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So I spent a contract period working with UG Solutions as an independent security contractor in Gaza at the distribution sites, and I got a firsthand experience of the delivery, the distribution, the process. Firsthand experience at all 4 of the distribution sites, 3 in the south in Rafah, and the one that we have in central Gaza near the Nesarim corridor. So my witness and my testimony to this comes from being on the ground and seeing it with my own eyes and experiencing it firsthand. I echo that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is not a humanitarian organization, and they are not succeeding in delivering food. But also to consider that humanitarian assistance, the humanitarian assistance operation to support an entire population, because remember, the entire population of Gaza is shut out. That requires more than just food. That requires water, fuel, medicine, educational materials, hygiene products, everything that you need in life that besides just food, that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is not providing. All they're providing in their deliveries is dried food goods, dried rice, dried beans, dried pasta. They're providing nothing that is needed in terms of the everything in daily life. But also to that point that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation continues to say that they're the only ones doing anything and that no one else is doing anything and they're the only ones doing anything. Well, I'd like to remind everybody that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation are the ones that said we can do it. When the United Nations was shut out and the process of how we're going to deliver aid, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation said we can do it. So to now say that, oh, we're the only ones doing it, when they said that we could do it, and mind you, they're getting paid to do it. They aren't doing this as a nonprofit or as a collection of international of countries that are all pitching in to do this. They're getting paid to do this, and they're not achieving it. So you've often heard the daily meal count. So by my calculations, based on the rate of delivery and how much they've been delivering, by today, 73 days of GHF delivery is they've delivered 109 million meals. Now, at face value, that sounds very impressive. 109 million meals. But remember, their edict, their obligation is to deliver food to the entire enclave of Gaza. So when you look at just that basic math in terms of 109 million meals over 73 days to a population of 2.1 million, 2.2 million, depending on when we get the next census of how many are still alive in Gaza, 3 meals a day, that's only 17 days of food out of those 73 days. So 56 days out of 73 with no food. Even if you were to take that breakdown and break it down to 1 meal a day. 1 meal a day, that's still only, there's still 22 days out of that 73 days without any food. Furthermore, the caloric value, the kilocal value of each meal per box. So a Gaza Humanitarian Foundation box, these boxes you see on the trucks that people open up. One box, this is by GHF's calculation. This is not something I've made up. This is not something that comes from any other NGO or source. This is from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and their numbers and their proclamation. One box, because remember they advertise by meals. One box is intended to feed 5 people for 3.5 days, 3 meals a day. So in that one box, that's 52.5 meals as advertised that they say that they're feeding. Well, I've opened up that box and I've looked in it and I've seen what's in it. And I've taken each item out and I've counted up the entire kilocalorie per one box, all the calories in one box. And the other thing to remember is that in their advertisement of the meals, they advertise it by pre-cooked nutritional facts. All of the items in these boxes are dried goods that have to be cooked, which you cannot take the pre-cooked caloric intake as the nutrition that we're actually providing. You have to take the post-cooked caloric intake because all of these items have to be cooked. So when you take the post-cooked caloric intake of the total of all these items and you break that out, it's 220 kilocalories per meal. So in a 3-meal day, even if they're getting it, that's 660 kilocalories. That's not enough for the body to even function. That's starvation. And then furthermore, when you break that down to where they're only eating that every other day, maybe, that's famine. So looking just at the numbers, just pure facts. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is a mechanism that is not only not succeeding, it is actively leading to further starvation and famine based on the presumption that what they're doing is providing the food needed into the enclave, because they're not. Furthermore, the sites, all 4 sites, are south of the Netzarim corridor. Nobody north of the Netzarim corridor in Jabalia, in Gaza City, in Erez, can go south of the Netzarim corridor, and no one can go north of it. So a large percentage of the population is isolated north of the Netzarim and have had no food from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation because none can get there. All the sites are south. I've been to them. So soon, as the world is already starting to see, as airdrops were conducted over northern Gaza City and Jabalia recently by the French and the Spaniards and the Jordanians, and I think the Germans have done one yesterday. Other nations are now starting to see the level of destruction in what's gone on in northern Gaza, just northern Gaza. But when we go back, the international community goes into northern Gaza on the ground to see it with our own eyes. When others outside of Israel or outside of the IDF can go back in and see what's going on. I've said this before, I will say it again, and I will continue to say it. On that day, it will bring the world to its knees in seeing the level of destruction, famine, starvation. It will bring the world to its knees. It will be one of the most wretched humanitarian disasters that the world has seen in modern life, in our lifetimes. And that day is coming. And if we don't collectively, as an international community, this isn't just on Israel to fix. This isn't just on the United States to fix. This is on the international community to come forward and demand that the United Nations be re-allowed in with its capacity and capability to do more than just deliver food. This is more than just about food. This is about doctors, nurses, pediatricians, dentists, veterinarians, food, water. The other thing to remember is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation provides no water at all. Zero. If anybody saw me on Piers Morgan yesterday, where Mr. Jonathan Conricus debated, he even said that. Yeah, we give the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation gives them no water. You need water to survive. You need water to cook all of the food we're giving them. So not only is this leading to more starvation and edging closer and closer to a regional famine, it's an active, systematic process to do that. And the world needs to wake up to see the truth that 109 million meals is not something to celebrate. So pending any questions or comments, that's kind of my offering on the facts.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Actually, as we are listening to this horrific testimony and what's happening on the ground in Gaza, let me ask you this question. From your time working inside the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, what can you tell us about how decisions were made regarding that 8 centers and who was in charge, and how incidents involving violence against civilians were handled internally? Since I think we've watched some of the footage that some of these organizations are shooting civilians gathering around the food. So what can you tell us about this?
So first of all, the sites themselves. There's only 4 sites. And out of those 4 sites, 3 of the 4 are all the way in the south where people have to travel a far distance. The sites were constructed and built before Gaza Humanitarian Foundation or any of us were even there. They were already built, already decided where they were going to go, already built by Kogat, and the IDF decided where they were going to go and they built them. So the issue that I've had that from day one, from the very first day I saw these sites and went to these sites, this is an issue that I've had from day one, that the sites were constructed and established within active combat areas. Now, the criticism I've heard from that is that, well, all of Gaza is a war zone. Okay, regardless of that, there are areas within the war zone that are specifically designated as offensive combat operations. Everybody's aware that the IDF had been conducting Operation Gideon's Chariots from the south through central Gaza, which was an offensive operation, a military, deliberate offensive operation. All 3 of the sites in the south were put in the middle of the engagement areas of this offensive operation. So to say that, oh, all of Gaza is a war zone and there's nowhere else to put them, that is a lie. And that is a straw man argument that's just meant to deceive people. The Geneva Convention specifically states, it doesn't say try, it doesn't say if you can, it doesn't say if you want to, it demands that civilians be safeguarded and protected on the battlefield, that civilians are not purposely drawn into areas of combat, especially to a site that specifically services a civilian need, a hospital, a school, a mosque, a church, a secure distribution site to deliver food. The argument of, well, there's nowhere else to put them, lies, untrue. There are many other places that these could have been established in corridors and areas that aren't conducting offensive operations. Easily could have. So why they weren't? To me, it's nothing more than deliberate. I don't see any other reason. Now, in terms of the...
You mean that the decisions are being made deliberately to commit such kind of incidents like shooting or regarding the 8 centers? And was that mentioned in your testimony before?
Yeah, so and it is no secret. Mr. Conricus confirmed this yesterday in his discussion with me in his debate. Others have said it. GHF has said it, that yes, we shoot to communicate or to control the population, but we only shoot at their feet or over their head, or sometimes towards the sea. There is a critical flaw with that statement. To shoot, we're not talking about shooting at combatants. We're not talking about shooting warning shots to warn an armed combatant or a threat. We're talking about an unarmed civilian population consisting of women and children. Targeting them in any means whatsoever, whether you're shooting at their feet or over their head, doesn't matter. You cannot do that. But also the argument of, oh, well, sometimes we shoot warning shots out towards the sea. The entire coastal corridor along the sea of the Mediterranean in Gaza daily has hundreds of thousands of people along it because it's the only way that a Palestinian can travel from the north to the south to either one, get to these sites or move anywhere within central Gaza. To move anywhere within central Gaza, to get to a hospital, to get to a distribution site, to get to a refugee or an displaced persons camp. You have to travel to the coastal road and you have to travel south along that route. So at any given time, there are hundreds of thousands of unarmed, innocent civilians moving that UG Solutions and the IDF are just firing warning shots out towards the sea. Where do you think those bullets land?
So these people who were shooting or committing these incidents, they were not handled internally or questioned.
They don't see a problem with it. There's nothing from their perspective, there's nothing to handle because they don't see a problem with it. Sure, it's fine to shoot warning shots or, the misnomer about a warning shot's a bullet. It comes out of a gun and it can kill you just the same. There's no such thing as a warning shot. The other thing to remember is that the United States, UG Solutions, we are not combatants in this war. We are not allies and side by side with the IDF in this war as contractors. We are independent contractors on a tourist visa in Israel, paid to be there. Not by the United States government, by a private contract. We are private contractors. We are not there as an ally side by side with Israel in the fighting of this war. We have no combatant authority. The only time we can pull the trigger on that weapon or use force, stun grenades, tear gas, pepper spray against an unarmed civilian is if there is a hostile and imminent threat. We can't shoot at people for crowd control. We can't throw stun grenades and tear gas to move them off of a site. All of those are war crimes. And people tell, well, that's not a war crime. There's a better way to do it, but that's not a war crime. It absolutely is a war crime. I would recommend to everybody that says that, open up the international humanitarian law, which all of us, Israel is a signatory to. The United States is a signatory to. Open it up and go to the core principles of humanitarian law in the conduct of warfare, which are the protocols of the Geneva Convention, and go to the fourth protocol and read about the obligation to safeguard and protect civilians on the battlefield. Because what I'm talking about in the shooting and the displacement, we're not talking about combatants. We're talking about innocent, unarmed civilians.
Thank you very much, Anthony, for this insightful testimony. And please stay with us for the rest. There might be some answers, some questions from other participants. And now we move to Dr. Tanya Hassan, who was there, and she, doctor, just returned from Gaza, and she had a testimony before the UN Security Council. Dr. Tanya, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Hopefully my internet connection will be all right. I'm sorry if it's not.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me, and I'm sorry I've been traveling for the last 3 days, so I haven't had a chance to sort of prepare anything formal for you all, but fortunately that usually gives for the most relevant and sincere talks. So I was in Gaza twice, once last year in March of 2024, and then again this year in February and March of 2025. The situation last year was so dire that I remember thinking it was about 1 month after, or 2 months after the ICJ ruling on plausible genocide. And when we got to Gaza, the situation, at least in Al-Aqsa hospital where we were based, was so horrific that in my head I was thinking, this can't get any worse. This is the worst that it could possibly be. And of course, it got much worse, and it has continued to get worse ever since I left Gaza this March. I went to Gaza in February of this year. It was during the ceasefire period, and that did allow us to move around quite a bit. So it allowed us to assess some of the existing hospitals or pre-existing hospitals where I and some colleagues used to teach prior to October 2023. And the reason we were doing these assessments is that I'm a pediatric intensive care doctor, and there are no more remaining pediatric or neonatal intensive care units of the pre-existing ones in Gaza City or north of Gaza. And so a small acronyms are PICU and NICU for pediatric and neonatal ICUs. Small ones were set up in a small non-governmental hospital to fulfill that need, which was great, but the beds were always full. So we were trying to assess the damage of previous pediatric hospitals to see if we could set up PICUs and NICUs. I can tell you I'd worked at the Nasser Pediatric Hospital. It's different than Nasser, which is the large hospital in Khan Yunis. There was a pediatric hospital, the oldest pediatric hospital in Palestine, I believe. Nasser Hospital was completely destroyed. It's rubble. The TC Hospital was predominantly destroyed, and all the essential equipment was destroyed, including things like the oxygen generator, electricity generators, etc. They'd repaired what they could, and they got the ground floor up and running again for basic services. But TC provided all of the pediatric subspecialty services to the population in Gaza. So everything from pulmonology, endocrinology, renal medicine. They even provided all the cancer care for blood cancers in children, so things like leukemia and lymphoma. They had just finished the state-of-the-art pediatric oncology center for those blood cancers. I had visited the hospital only a few years prior, once this unit was opened. The unit was destroyed. Most of the hospital had been destroyed, and there was Hebrew graffiti over the walls and evidence of very clear intentional destruction of the medical equipment in that hospital, including like gunshot holes into the motherboard of essential equipment. The fluoroscopy machine cables had been cut, things like that. So those were the two main pediatric hospitals. Then there was Al Durra that was forcibly evacuated. And as you know, Kamal Adwan Hospital had a pediatric intensive care unit as well, and was completely destroyed. The footage from that hospital demonstrates sort of serial destruction of every unit. The pediatric and neonatal intensive care units this isn't just collateral damage from a nearby explosion. You know, these are units that have been completely destroyed. So in that, and I should also mention that Antisi was used as a military base by the Israeli military. So what does that do to all those services for children in Gaza? Subspecialty services no longer had a home. Children with diseases that require subspecialty care. So I'll give you a few examples. There were over 100 or around 100 known cystic fibrosis cases. That was the prevalence in Gaza prior to October 2023. When I was in Gaza, they only accounted for 10 of them. We don't know where the other 90 are. Are they dead? Are they alive? If they're alive, where are they receiving care? They're clearly not. So just the subspecialists who cared for them could no longer account for them. And that applies across pediatric chronic illnesses that existed prior to October 2023. But now you have all these new diseases that are emerging amongst children, you know, children that would have been diagnosed newly. Where are they receiving services? And the same applies to adults with chronic diseases. I speak about children not because they're more important, but because that is my subspecialty. The adults are equally neglected in their care. I'll give you the example of cancer care. The Turkish Friendship Hospital, which is the only specialty cancer hospital in Gaza, was used as a military base by the Israeli military. It was subsequently completely flattened and destroyed for no reason. It wasn't a fighting zone. They withdrew and they, I'm not sure if it was detonated or bombed from above, but it was completely destroyed. They moved cancer, the Palestinian healthcare workers moved cancer services several times once they had to evacuate Turkish Friendship Hospital, including to the European Gaza Hospital. That meant that there was a period of many months with no chemotherapy given whatsoever to Gaza's cancer population. The European Gaza Hospital was subsequently bombed several times, forcibly evacuated, and cancer services again had no home and ultimately moved to Nasser Hospital. But they're using outdated equipment that doesn't allow, equipment that's not appropriate and safe for the disposal and preparation of chemotherapy drugs. I'm giving you these very specific examples because I know often when I'm asked to speak, the snippets that are taken out of my talk are the very gruesome aspects of what I dealt with in pediatric care. Children who were involved in blast injuries with very severe wounds, colleagues of mine who've lost their families, and I can speak very briefly about both of those things. Yes, these things are horrific and they make everybody pause, but there's a slow death that's happening through several means. I spoke just now of chronic illnesses, but there are new illnesses that are emerging. There's an outbreak at the moment of something called acute flaccid paralysis in children where they go paralyzed. The cases I saw in February and March were unlike anything I've ever seen. Actually, I'd seen more cases of AFP or acute flaccid paralysis in that 5 weeks than I've seen in my entire career. I raised the alarm bells, spoke to the WHO about that. I see Dr. James Smith on the call. I spoke to him about it. I was very concerned at this emergence of this outbreak of acute flaccid paralysis. And the cases weren't typical of the causes I was familiar with. Usually it's a slower progression. These were children that were going from mild symptoms to complete paralysis, including their breathing muscles, sometimes within 24 hours. And one of the diseases that can cause this is something called Guillain-Barré syndrome. Again, most of their presentations weren't typical, but even for that, the treatment is a particular drug that they no longer have in Gaza. It's a particular machine that washes the blood. They no longer have filters for that machine. These children are in the ICU on ventilators if they were fortunate enough to get a space, and will likely die in the long term because you do not have the services available to care for a child who's completely paralyzed, including breathing muscles. They will die of complications of their disease. And if they survive, there are very limited rehabilitative services that would allow them to regain a function and a decent quality of life. So again, these are just very sort of specific medical examples. In terms of trauma, I mean, this is, I'm actually in Sudan right now. I've worked in other conflict areas before. This is the most indescribable, horrific thing I've ever seen committed onto a besieged population, and particularly children. And I say particularly children because it's my specialty, but also because the children in Gaza, the proportion of children amongst the injured is unlike anywhere I've ever worked before. Normally in a war zone, you have 80–90% of the casualties are young men. In Gaza, it's the demographics of the population. It's about approximately 40–50% children, 20–25% women, and 20–25% men. Those are the demographics we were seeing. It's a little bit different now, where we're seeing a lot more young men because a lot of the casualties are coming from these Gaza Humanitarian, the GHF sites, where it's often the adolescent boys and young men that go to retrieve aid for their families. But in terms of blast injuries, it's exactly mirrors the demographics of the population. And that in and of itself tells you one thing. This is a very clear, deliberate attack on an entire population, not on a sort of military opponent. So I could give you specifics about what's been going on with or the sorts of cases I was seeing in children. I don't want to take too much time because I know there are many other speakers on this call. But I will tell you that I left Gaza with a pediatric intensive care unit that was filled with maimed children who had lost most of their family, and with very complex injuries that will require extensive rehabilitation that's just not available in Gaza and is just not possible right now. My colleagues have lost multiple family members. In fact, if you give me 1 second, I'd like to read a message from you from one of my colleagues working in a pediatric ICU, who messaged me to tell me that his family was hit yesterday. Several members of his family were killed. His daughter lost her leg. She is a dental student, and he was begging me to try and help him evacuate her. And his words were, her mental, I'm sorry, I'm just translating on the fly here. My daughter's mental status is very difficult. I want to give her hope for tomorrow, especially because she's studying medicine. I don't want her to lose her determination or what's the word, like keenness in her studies. You understand, of course. And then when he asked about evacuation, he said, we are trying to salvage what we can of our family. And that's the reality for every family in Gaza. This same doctor, a while back, I was speaking at the Vatican, and I'm just actually going to translate it automatically because I think it will be easier. No, this is going to take too much time.
That's fine.
I'll do it on the fly. He says, just give me 1 second.
Now we can get, I mean, the essence of what he said.
Yeah. He says, tell them that there are people here that deserve life, that people are awaiting death in any moment. Tell them that we're living on a hope that there'll be justice in this lifetime. Tell them that there are people of excellence in Gaza, or creative people of excellence in Gaza, that children used to play, and now homes have been destroyed, staff are exhausted. Tell them that childhood here is being exterminated for no crime.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor. Yes. Dr. Tanya, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your comments. And now we move to Mr. Mohammed Jamil, the Arab Organization for Human Rights in the UK chairman, and because he has some comments to make and announcements regarding the crimes committed by Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Mr. Jamil, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good evening, our esteemed guests. I have some comments. In fact, the ongoing genocide in Gaza need a lot of work. We do our best. We do the minimum to break this terrible silence in the world. Recently, we wrote to Hague Group to call the United Nations Assembly, General Assembly for a meeting. There is an open session in its 10th emergency. Just need a state to apply for this call to have a meeting. Indeed, this session gathered in light of United for Peace resolution, when there is a situation threat the security and peace in the world, and the Security Council can't take these measures, the General Assembly, according to United for Peace resolution, replace the Security Council and can take these measures. In Palestine case, there is a lot of decisions, a lot of resolutions have been taken according to this mechanism, and still the 10th emergency since 1990 still open, and it takes a lot of decision. Recently, it has 3 meetings, but unfortunately, none of these resolutions have any way to be executed. This is very important. This does not mean to leave this mechanism. We have to pressure this mechanism because we haven't any other venues, any other peaceful tools. This is international tool, can make a lot of pressure. Unfortunately, because there is no political will, because America is support Israel, because Israel classified now as an entity above the law, all the resolutions, everything we see, because happened because of that. No one can put an end to these atrocities. I remind you with resolutions have been taken many times in many cases by General Assembly when Security Council couldn't take these measures. In 1956, when the triple Britain, France, Israel attacked Egypt. Everyone know this incident. On that time, Eisenhower, I think, was the president. Brezhnev was the leader of the Soviet Union. He threatened to enter the war. Immediately, Eisenhower go to the General Assembly because in the Security Council there was a veto from France and Britain, the 2 states who are participate in the attack on Egypt. In this General Assembly, they took decision to intervene military. They send the troops. Britain and France forced to take their forces and end the attack on Egypt. So we need a power to lead. If there is a serious move through the General Assembly to avoid the veto in the Security Council, this will be brilliant. But unfortunately, the Arabs, the Muslim regimes, Arab regimes, don't move. They don't. They can ask superpower like China, Russia, to come and execute the resolutions of the General Assembly. We don't want military intervention like 1956. Only we need 100 countries go with a convoy, a humanitarian convoy, through Egypt from Rafah and raise their flags and try to enter Israel, dare to shoot a bullet on this convoy led by Russia, China, and 100 countries. It's very simple move, but Egypt and other countries, they are complicit in this genocide. Egypt don't want to take any steps in this regard and just issue statements. And sometimes the terrible things now, they are keep silence. They don't They don't issue any statement. They don't call for any summit, Arab League, Islamic cooperation, whatever. The second issue I would like to praise Colonel Anthony, who come forward and break the silence and expose the violations, the killing, the torture, and the distribution centers run by Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. We learned that he received a lot of threats. We encourage him to keep on his position, to fight, to expose, don't kneel down. We assure you we have submitted 5 applications. The first one, about 70 pages. We did it in very critical time. Through our legal team, we mentioned about 6 officials from the GHF who are responsible for, and we asked the General Prosecutor of the ICC to investigate, participate in genocide, war crime, crimes against humanity. Second application, we submit an application to the European Union to impose sanction according to Magnitsky style, a global sanction against those who violate human rights. Again, we mention 6 of the officials, including the security contractors. We also submit an application to the UK. Also, we ask for sanction. Also, meanwhile, we were exploring the national venues to follow these guys in criminal cases, and this is very all the 3 ones we issue press releases. But the thing now, the new thing, there is an official has Armenian nationality. We prepare a file. This is the first time I mentioned that. Before 1 month, we have submitted an application to the General Prosecutor in Armenia to follow this case, to investigate. This guy have strong relations with United Arab Emirates. He is in United Arab Emirates. He resides in another country. We will follow up with this also venue. He is totally complicit in this in these crimes committed, and his name mentioned in the registration document in Switzerland, also in America. He is one of the leaders of the foundation. I don't know if Anthony, the colonel, know about him. We would love if he know about these guys, because we will follow up until the end. We'll not scare, we'll not step back. We will fight. We will fight. This is the only thing we can do. People lose their lives. For me, I'm not ready to lose my humanity. I reach a point that I will lose my humanity, because every day I watch and I can't do anything. I stand up. I told myself, do your best, be the voice for these voiceless people, and in the end of the day, there will be a solution. There will be an end to this tragedy. There will be an accountability. This is my belief. So we'll follow up with General Prosecutor in Armenia. We receive from many political parties there good indications. And we not just submit the applications. We put pressure through politicians, through parliament's members. In Europe, for example, we sent for about 100 member parliament to support our application. In UK, we sent to the UK members. Also, we explore a move in UK, a criminal case against someone in the UK. We hope we will succeed, and we explore other venues, and we call anyone have any venue, any idea, come forward with this idea, who can help us. We are ready to cooperate. As I said, this is the only thing we can do. This is unprecedented atrocities, unprecedented crimes. Animals in the jungles don't do that. In history, I read about many wars, about savages, about many things happen, but like this, I didn't read. I didn't. Thank you very much, and we will keep going. And many thanks for our guests. Many thanks for your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you, Nader.
Thank you very much for this insightful thoughts, and also for your efforts to help this issue. And just we ask everybody just to stay with us through the webinar so that he might have some questions from other participants. And now we move to Mr. Chris Smalls, American activist and organizer, recently returned from the Handala Humanitarian Mission. Mr. Chris.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? I'm going to have to stay off camera because I'm on the move, and
Okay.
yeah. But I hope you guys can hear me.
We can hear very well.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'll keep it really brief, so we can respect everybody's time. And yeah, for those who don't know, my name is Chris Smalls, the founder of the Amazon Labor Union, the first union in American history for Amazon workers. I also was a recent volunteer on this Handala mission, which was mission number 37, to try to break the illegal siege in Israel. I want to give you guys a really good breakdown of what happened as we tried to deliver this humanitarian aid.
Sorry for interruption. I mean, do you want to have some time more so that you can join us through the camera?
Well, I can't, unfortunately, because I have other obligations with other interviewers today, so I can only stay on the video at the moment.
So no worries, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
That's fine.
So yeah, I mean, for those who don't know what happened, haven't heard about what happened to me, I was brutally assaulted as the only Black American on board the Handala. And at the point of interception, just like the Madeleine, I will say the IOF, they aboard the ship, they cut communications right away. They don't want you guys to see what happens after they cut communications. This is the reason why they strategically try to isolate us from the rest of the world. And basically, we are held captive against our will on deck with our hands up. You may have seen some images or videos that was released. And we had to travel to the port of Rashad, which was about 12 hours away from where we were heading, which was Gaza. We would have made it to Gaza by 3 a.m. that Sunday morning. We were that close. We were less than 60 miles away from Gaza Strip when they intercepted us. And as you all know, Israel has no jurisdiction in international waters. We know from the ruling that the ICJ ruled last year in that case against genocide in South Africa. Even though we were legally in our legal rights, they once again took over the boat. They made sure they gained control of the ship, and they towed us back, or pretty much detained us until we were transferred over to the port of immigration. And I want to let people know what's happening during these hours. Um, it's the middle of the night, of course. We were captured at 11 p.m., not at 3 a.m. like the Madeleine, but once again, after sunset, they would never come and kidnap a boat or try to take you during the daytime. They want to move in the middle of the night. And what I've seen from being on the night shift on the Handala for a few days in a row was not only the increase activity of drones flying over the Mediterranean. But what's really more shocking is that all of these different governments and drones from Egypt, from Greece, from Libya, from all of these coastal guards, and even Israel, all of these drones, at least 50 drones a night in the 4 hour window, I would see on the night shift. And the shocking thing is just that they will allow millions of refugees over the years to continue to drown in this open graveyard. And that's one of the things that are really shocking to me is that these drones are not there to help. They're just there to surveil and collect data. They don't care whether it's refugees or not. They're not going to send help. And as you saw with the Madeleine, we had to conduct a search and rescue mission on the way to Gaza. On Handela, we didn't have that same scenario. There was some distress calls, but they were too far out for us to get to. And that was real, disheartening to hear that as well. But once again, uh, once the day of interception came, these drones were doing a lot more than just surveilling us. I can say as a witness, these drones were being used as military operations. Um, Especially as the IOF approached us and got closer to our vessel, these drones were dropping some type of smoke flares to block our visibility all around the boat. You know, it was clear. Usually, when you're riding in the middle of the night on the boat, you can see it's clear. There's moonlight. You can sort of see the water. You can see pretty much in further, like a far out view if you wanted to. Even with a flashlight, you could see. But this night in particular, our visibility was really limited. For some odd reason, a clear, well, not a clear, but a foggy gray smoke came and basically blocked our visibility while they were kettling us as a military operation using these drones to drop these type of flares. And as they approached the boat, they announced through a PA system that they're going to onboard the boat and for us to have our hands up. And they even acknowledged the fact that we were on a hunger strike. They say, we know you guys are on a hunger strike, but they still brought sandwiches and water regardless because they still wanted to make propaganda. They even brought a camera crew on board. And that's something that people don't even know, that the IOF brings a camera crew on board for propaganda. And knowing that we were on a hunger strike, they, for several hours while we were being detained, they tried to force us to eat. They kept trying to get these shots at, like they did with Greta Thunberg, and make these propaganda photos. And we all were tired, exhausted. We already started our hunger strike hours before. And we're really upset that they're trying to do this. And we're telling them that we do not want any food. Finally, they gave up on that. Um, and one thing that really shocks me about this whole situation is that the average commando for this unit, this is a killing machine unit, by the way. Unit 13 are the ones who snipe children, who unplug incubators. These are killing machines. The most shocking thing is that physically, I was probably still bigger and taller than most of them, if not all of them. These were young adults. These are kids. They were 20, the average age might have been 20, 21 years old. And that was the most shocking thing that I've ever experienced, is that I'm looking at these people and these killing machines, and I'm saying these are college kids, average college kid that you'll see out and about anywhere. And they're brainwashed and they think that they're doing something notable. And I said, wow, this is insane. This is beyond what I ever could imagine. And they have all these military equipment, they have all these weapons and guns and technology. And as an American citizen, all I could think about in my head is that we're paying for all of this stuff. We're paying for all of these weapons and technology that they're using to stop this Handala from delivering medical supplies, baby formula, baby food, and stuffed animals. What a shame. And we rode with them for about 12 hours. We were delivered in the morning. They called us off the boat one by different countries. They left the Americans for last. It was 7 of us. We made up 1/3 of the crew. Um, I was one of the last to get off. And immediately, as they transferred it over to the Port of Immigration authorities, they had a camera crew waiting at the docks to take pictures as we're getting off. So we started leading chants, chants about the Handela, chants in Bella Ciao, and screaming out "Free Palestine" from the top of our lungs. And the whole time they're recording this. They have camera crews there. And if you guys don't know, it's kind of amazing how we saw so many photos of propaganda with the Mad Lean, but with this mission in particular, there's hardly been any photos from Israel that's been posted yet till this day. For some reason, and I know the real reason, is because what happened next is that I was attacked by 7 authorities, thrown to the ground, they put their knee in my back, they twisted my arms behind my back. 3 men on each side levitated me while one of the authorities was pulling my hair and grabbing my chains and choking me to the point where I couldn't breathe. They did this several times, and then they separated me from the rest of the crew. They took me into a separate room. They threw me against the wall. And while they were doing this, they were yelling out some racist remarks saying that they're not my brother. They're the furthest thing from my brother. And
you see, and of course, it was something that, I mean, your experience was a little bit harsh and needs some kind of sympathy from the other members of the crew to help you. So why did they target you?
Well, I can tell you this from my experience. This was nothing more, and this is nothing more or less than definitely racism and the color of my skin. I can tell you and attest to my experience with the Israeli authorities that there's no way, impossible that Palestinians will ever have a peaceful life amongst people like that. They have such a hatred for people of color and such a hatred for Palestinians that it resonated from their bodies. I've never in my 37 years in America have felt as much hated and as much racism and bigotry as I felt in my 5 days in captivity in Israel. That's how much.
I'm very sorry to hear this experience, but that's the truth on the ground. Thank you very much, Chris, for your testimony and for your experience. And we move now to Professor Stephen Zunes. Sorry for keeping you waiting that long. Mr. Zunes is a renowned scholar of international security and foreign policy at the University of San Francisco. Mr. Zunes, you have the floor.
No problem with the wait. This has been fascinating and, of course, very disturbing to hear this testimony. Just want to, just before I start, just a correction on noting the 1956 Suez War. First of all, it was Khrushchev, not Brezhnev, who was the Soviet leader at the time. But the the General Assembly did not pass a United for Peace resolution there that would have, brought in troops. So they did that for the Korean War a few years earlier. What forced an end to the war and an Israeli withdrawal, despite the British and French veto, was that President Eisenhower put enormous pressure on Israel to withdraw. Now let's remember that France and Britain, Israel are three of America's closest allies. Yet the United States had a lot of leverage with Britain and France because they still owed us a lot of money from loans for World War II, which had only ended 11 years earlier. And even though the United States was not giving a lot of aid to Israel at that point, Eisenhower, said he was going to remove the tax-exempt status of the Jewish National Fund, which raised enormous amount of money from American Jews to support Israel if they did not withdraw. And but I think the underlying point is that the United States does have the leverage to stop this. This is not a tail wagging the dog situation. The United States really has the power. We have seen how not just Eisenhower, but Nixon, Carter, Reagan, the first President Bush, Obama, have all used the threat of withholding financial or military support for Israel to force Israel to withdraw or to agree to a ceasefire or other methods. Now, I should also mention I like the idea of a multinational force moving in and trying to force the issue. And I would support the General Assembly doing Unite for Peace things. I was just correcting some of the history there. I'm in no way disagreeing with, I think, this very, very important idea. But even that might not be necessary if the U.S. was willing to apply the pressure. Now, unlike most of the other speakers, they do not have firsthand knowledge of the situation. I've just been following media reports, but I do want to talk briefly about the broader political implications, particularly here in the United States. Now, this is I should mention that this is not the only ongoing genocide, which includes mass starvation. We look at Sudan, we look at the Rohingya in Burma, and this is not historically the first genocide directly supported by the United States, with in some cases acquiescence from other Western countries that also involve mass starvation. We look at Bangladesh in 1971. We look at Guatemala in the early 1980s. We look at East Timor in the 24 years of Indonesian occupation. So again, this is not simply about AIPAC or other Zionist pressure. This is just yet another example of Western imperialism and its willingness to support genocide against people of color. The difference is that these other genocides were not well known at the time. And this is. I mean, there's no denying, there's no covering up. People can even see it on their telephones. So it is even more inexcusable than the others, both ongoing and historical. And of course, the direct complicity of the United States. We don't support the Myanmar regime. We do not, support either party in Sudan. Though someone could argue that UAE is, supporting the RSF, and the countries that therefore arm the UAE are maybe, may have some moral legal responsibility. But by and large, it's nothing like the support, of course, the United States is giving towards Israel, not just in terms of military aid, but in terms of the UN vetoes and the like. What has shifted is that I mean, on the one hand, one can say, is children starving to death any worse than children being blown to bits by bombs? But for whatever reason, the starvation has the famine that Israel, with U.S. support, and through and the atrocities and propaganda from the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has caused a major shift here in the United States. We're getting front page coverage in mainstream media of civilian casualties to an unprecedented degree. We're having Western leaders, even Trump, acknowledging, that Israel is causing a famine. For the first time ever, a majority of Democrats in Congress voted to restrict some military aid to Israel. The Republicans are the majority, so that they were not able to stop it. But this is a really important threshold for those of us who followed U.S. politics in regard to Israel-Palestine for decades. We're seeing, all these pro-Israel politicians and pundits criticizing Israel, for the first time. Now, we can of course say it's too little, too late. I mean, that's true, of course. But we need all the allies we can, and this it does mark a real shift. There's even a bill that's been introduced in Congress to end U.S. funding for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. So, again, this debate is finally reaching the mainstream. Now, the shift may be less moral than it is tactical. I mean, I think a lot of Democrats are getting nervous that the left wing of the party is not just being critical of what Israel is doing in Gaza, but is starting to question Zionism itself. And it is not, and I think the party leaders going after Netanyahu, I think, may be a way of trying to stop anti-Israel attitudes from becoming more mainstream and becoming a litmus test for next year's midterm congressional elections and the 2028 presidential primaries. And, I think one of the risks is, this is all Netanyahu, and putting aside the fact that obviously is much more than that, and these policies are supported by a majority of Israelis, even those who may not like Netanyahu. But the fact that some elected Democrats are running scared is that for the first time, these Democratic politicians are more scared of their constituents than they are of AIPAC. And that, yes, AIPAC certainly has power, certainly has influence. They've certainly created a climate of intimidation on Capitol Hill. But you can say that about a lot of powerful, lobbying groups in the United States. The reason that the Democrats have been willing to fold in facing AIPAC as opposed to, say, the National Rifle Association or powerful business interests that are anti-environmental or some of the others, is that they get pressure from their constituents. And what we're seeing for the first time also is, especially as the scenes of starvation become more and more obvious, is that mainstream liberal groups, mainstream progressive groups, peace groups that were previously wanted to avoid Israel-Palestine are finally speaking up and finally saying this is unacceptable. And this really does count a shift. And even within the Jewish community, in the last few days, more than 1,000 rabbis, mostly American, but also including a few Israelis, have signed an open letter condemning, quote, the mass killing of civilians and the use of starvation as a weapon of war. It's called for moving extensive humanitarian aid into Gaza and for a crackdown on settler violence in the West Bank. Even the Union for Reform Judaism.
So we really sorry to stop you there, and we'll get back to you later. Now we have two other speakers who have first-hand testimony about what's happening in Gaza. To start with Dr. James Smith, British doctor who worked at Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital. Sorry, Dr. Smith, for keeping you waiting that long, but we are very interested in your testimony, first-hand testimony about what happened in Gaza Hospital. have the floor.
Thanks for having me with you, and I'm going to keep this brief. I'm sorry to interrupt Professor Stephen as well, because it's really important, I think, to hear this kind of breadth of interdisciplinary critical engagement and analysis. I have a few short reflections. The first really to emphasize, and several speakers have already referred to this, is that the GHF, this supposed humanitarian mechanism, is no less than a death multiplier in Gaza. MSF has just released a report where they describe this mechanism as a process of orchestrated killing. Approximately a quarter of the Palestinians that have been killed since the introduction of the GHF in that period have been killed in and around locations managed by the GHF. What we see when we look at the pattern of injuries since October of 2023 is that the increase in injuries between May and June of this year, the steep increase in the number of injuries, we haven't seen that since the first 3 months of the genocide. So we're seeing a dramatic increase in the number of Palestinians who are being injured as a result of Israeli military violence. And that is unmatched since December, January of 2024. I've spoken to colleagues, senior ER doctors working in Nuseirat, Deir al-Balah, Khan Yunis in the last couple of days, and they describe extreme violence. Many of us have seen the footage from the ER rooms at Nasser Hospital and Al-Aqsa. Again, imagery that we haven't seen really, other than in the worst. Sorry, we have seen, of course, but that parallels the worst days of the genocide. Tens, if not hundreds, of patients that are being treated on the floor in the emergency rooms. Really just utterly horrific conditions for healthcare workers to be working in, and of course for Palestinians themselves to be subjected to. One colleague of mine, he told me that he'd had to insert 50 chest tubes in a single day. In many other places, certainly for someone who spends a career in emergency medicine in the United Kingdom, you may not insert 50 chest tubes in an entire career. Certainly not in a single day. I mean, it is just incomprehensible, the scale and severity of violence that is being inflicted on the Palestinian people. The second thing I want to mention is to bring us back to this language of the humanitarian alibi. Really, the stage of the genocide that we have entered into now is the stage in which the language, if not the practice, of humanitarianism is being used as a paper-thin cover for the continuation of genocidal violence. And the reality is that many states that believe absolutely everything that Israel promotes by way of its propaganda campaign, many states have fallen for this veneer of humanitarianism. We often call this the humanitarian alibi. And I have to say that I don't like that terminology, because we generally use the word alibi to refer to a believable story that absolves an individual of the accusation that is leveled against them, or absolves them of the crimes that they're accused of committing. In this case, there's absolutely nothing believable about Israel's co-option of the language of humanitarianism. They have co-opted the vernacular of humanitarianism, but really what they've created is paper thin at best, this pretext for the continuation of the genocide by other means, just long enough to deflect growing condemnation by appearing to engage in acts of charity and benevolence, which then allows them the time to amplify their strategy of military violence elsewhere in Gaza and by other means. What we have to appreciate, of course, is that this discussion around the provision of food, and as our colleagues have emphasized, it is just food, not water, not shelter, not medicines, is occurring at the very same time as Netanyahu is explicitly stating plans to impose total military occupation over the Gaza Strip, and of course to continue to ethnically cleanse the remaining population of Gaza towards the south into this so-called humanitarian city. I want to reiterate two final points, if I may, Nader. The penultimate point is to really reiterate that by the GHF's own admission, its strategy is inadequate. And Anthony has already emphasized this, that the number of meals and the calorific content of those meals is inadequate. In the recent IPC report, they say exactly the same thing. If I may just quote very quickly, food aid shipments have been highly inadequate, and our analysis, the IPC analysis, of the food packages supplied by the GHF shows that their distribution plan would lead to mass starvation, even if it was able to function without the appalling levels of violence that have been reported. So even if it functioned to the greatest extent possible, it would still lead to mass starvation. And this brings me to my final point, which is that the GHF is functioning exactly as it was intended to function. This is a damage and death multiplier, and it is being used to enact population transfer by creating the conditions, the coercive conditions that require that people choose between either staying in place, staying in their homes, or displacing towards the south in the hope that they can find food and water that will allow them to survive from one day to the next. And that is, of course, along with many other of Israeli actions, a war crime under international law. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Thank you, James. Thank you very much. And now we move to the last speaker today, Dr. Junaid Sultan. Doctor recently returned from Gaza as well with first-hand knowledge of the humanitarian crisis. Dr. Sultan, sorry as well to keep you waiting for that long, but we really need to hear your testimony. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Nader, and thank you for, first of all, giving me an opportunity and be part of such a respectable panel. Most of my colleagues, all of you have touched most of the important topics, so I will keep it very brief and give my summary. And my medical colleagues, Dr. James and Dr. Tanya has touched already from the medical point of view as well. I would just like to start with the fact that it is my personal opinion, but I feel like that this genocide is not only different that it is a live telecast even on our telephone, and we are literally witnessing second by second of it, but I feel like that we all agree, and we have pretty much touched on the subject, that this is one of the few very unique genocides which are a man-made mess intentionally in a concentration camp, where the population of Gaza is purely dependent on the hands of the oppressors, where, like, there is no other authority which can basically do anything or make anything to make any situation better. Like, I have not seen WHO or any other institution or UN can make anything different or better here right now. So compared to the other genocides, I feel like that this one is really, really different, because this population depends purely at the mercy of their oppressor, and they are not able to do anything here. So in terms of, because this topic today is on the starvation, so I just want to keep it very brief, and I want to touch the last subject, that the starvation, which is really man-made, and which is really one of the tools to practically commit genocide, is the key role in this part of the stage of the genocide right now, because we know the different factors like mass displacement, destruction of the medical institutes, use of the war, destruction by the war, bombs and gunfires and mass killing. So loss of sanitation, loss of water, and different other factors which have been used to basically create an environment where such a culture has been made that now starvation is the last basically unique situation where it is gonna really multiply by 10 times. So right now the population of Gaza is the most vulnerable, where they are immunocompromised, they have no reserves, psychologically they have come to their really tethering point, and now at this point when the starvation is being forced at such a massive scale, this is really the tipping point. So where guns and bombs may not be able to do so much damage, but this starvation will do an extensive damage and which will kill thousands of people. And the way whole situation has been created where the medical facilities are really struggling and they are not able to even cope with, to struggle with day-to-day needs, where such a huge population with starving, they will not be able to basically even give them any space to basically deal with that. So this is a situation where even if now, I think so, it is coming to the point that where it may become irreversible and the damage will be so extensive and huge and catastrophic that we will lose thousands of people because of that. So it's very important that where UN needs to do some urgent step, and where I think so the implication of the Article 42, and they need to basically ask the peace force to open the humanitarian corridor and deliver this aid as soon as possible. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Junaid, for your input. And so we think all speakers, distinguished ones, have already made their inputs. And now we go back to wrap up with Anthony Aguilar. Anthony, are you there? Anthony Aguilar.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you for staying with us that long. And I actually have last two questions for you. And if our distinguished guests have questions as well after that, I have one first specific question. As far as you know, were there any external parties, Israel international security related, involved or directly coordinating with the foundation's officials?
Do you mean in terms of like the IDF or Kogat, or?
Yeah, I mean they have something like coordination. They know what they're doing there, facilitating, or taking part of the activities.
Yeah, so the Kogat is the one giving the, pretty much gives the orders. What I would call in terms of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation does not plan or determine any aspect of the delivery and distribution. We get told what to do. We get told from Kogat through the IDF Kogat liaison officers from Southern Command that are in the control center with the GHF personnel. We get told to us what time we're going to deliver, what sites we're going to deliver, how much aid we will deliver, when we will deliver it. If the aid has to stop, we get told that it stops. If the aid gets canceled, we get told that it's canceled. There's been numerous occasions where we had distribution or delivery and distribution planned and scheduled based on the directives we were given. Let's just say to secure distribution site number 2, for example, that's in the southern Rafah, southern Khan Yunis, southern western Rafah area, and we messaging to the population that distribution will be at 5 a.m. and then we don't show up and we don't distribute, and people have walked many kilometers to get there. And of course, when you have thousands of people that are queuing up to a site with the promise of being given food and then they're not, there's that just causes more panic and consternation, and really you're baiting people in a way that's really unethical. And the justification that's given, which I understand the justification, but it goes to further prove the point that I've made. They'll say, well, we had to cancel it because we have a combat operation going on and we don't want to put the Palestinians at risk. Okay, that's exactly why you do not build humanitarian aid distribution sites in active offensive combat areas. That's a clear example of why you don't do that. So every justification for the things that are done seems to reiterate a point that all of us are making in terms of but yes, the IDF, Kolgat and the IDF are directly involved in the distribution and the delivery. GHF is just the the mechanism to do it, so it's done through a humanitarian organization, which I've said this before, I'll say it again, that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is not a foundation. They are not focused on humanitarian goals, and they don't care about Gaza.
They don't. And my final question for you, Anthony, is when did you start to feel that what was happening was not humanitarian, and then it pushed you to decide to leave or to speak out now?
So when I first got involved in this mission as a contractor, I believed in the mission. There wasn't a lot of information available on the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, but I was aware of the current situation, that aid, that food was not going into Gaza. When I was offered the opportunity to work under Gaza Humanitarian Foundation through a subcontractor for security, I did believe in what the overall objective was, to bring food at scale, to bring humanitarian assistance into the enclave, and I wanted to be a part of that. I quickly realized that this mechanism was never intended to replace or meet the capacity of the United Nations. It can't. It absolutely cannot. As the gentleman before me had said, even operating at their optimal, full efficient, full on, and like recently, I think today or yesterday or today, Ambassador Huckabee said that we're going to put more into the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation to open 16 sites. And that's like doubling down on failure. That's like investing in something that's already failed when it does not have the capacity. And even if you increase it to 16 sites, it's still not. And I've brought this number up before, and it's so we've said that the UN mechanism, UNRWA and the UN, the World Food Program, is not a viable option because 95% of what they deliver into the enclave, quote unquote, goes to Hamas. USAID, Western agencies, 2 agencies within Israel, and others have said, and to include the UN and UNRWA, there's no evidence of that. There is no evidence of that. But let's just take that argument at face value and say, okay, 95% of what the United Nations takes in through its mechanism is taken by Hamas. So the only part left that goes to the enclave is 5%. That 5% of the volume and magnitude of what the UN does is 28% more than the maximum of what GHF can achieve. So even if the UN was only getting 5% of what they were doing into the enclave for the people that need it, that's still 28% more than what GHF is doing at their maximum. So to compare the GHF method to think that it's ever going to get to a point where it can achieve what the United Nations can achieve at scale, and remind again, all GHF is providing is dried food goods. We haven't even touched the realm of fuel, clothing, educational material, the nurses, the doctors, this is not humanitarian assistance. This is a facade of humanitarian assistance in order to systematically continue to starve the population.
Yeah, so that's the case. Now, to all our distinguished guests, do any one of you have any questions to Mr. Anthony Aguilar?
Just one question, 2 questions.
Go ahead.
Hi, Anthony. Thank you for courage and for your comments, for the exposing of these cowards. It's indeed a criminal organization, not a humanitarian organization. How you deal with the threats you receive, and what kind of threats you receive?
I've received, I mean, the majority of the threats or backlash that I receive are superficial. If people out there sitting behind a keyboard who won't even put their name on the line, who want to call me names and bash me and call me horrible things, I really don't care. It doesn't faze me at all.
I know, but what do you receive direct threats by
Oh
telephone?
yes, I have received some direct threats, and we take measures to.
You take measures.
And really, what I would say that the best protection for me and my family is the overwhelming support of people that support support the message. This is not my message. I'm simply a vessel who's sharing the truth of what I saw. And what I would ask everybody that's listening and everybody that hears this is that if you don't take my word for it alone, there are videos, there are pictures, there are testimony from doctors, surgeons, other people on the ground that have seen this, the IDF themselves. This isn't just me saying it. There are so many other data points that at some point the world has to put it together to say, maybe these doctors and physicians and PhDs and scholars and soldiers and IDF soldiers and people that know what they're talking about, maybe they are telling the truth, because I can guarantee you I'm not aligned with Hamas. I am not a paid spokesman of the PLO or Hamas or the Gaza Health Ministry. I'm not paid or supported or sponsored by anybody. All I am sharing is the truth. And when that truth is corroborated with other data points from trusted, credible sources, it's time for the world to wake up and take a look. Even you can see it with your own eyes. So the best protection for me against any threats or anything is the support of the international community to say, yes, we need to pay attention to this.
Okay. And regarding the contractors, the security contractors, how many personnel stationed there, like you? How many soldiers, former soldiers, high ranks, private, working for in the distribution centers?
I don't know the total number, because I was
large number, or
it's a large number. I just don't know, but I also know that they have 4 sites, and with those 4 sites, they hardly could hire enough people to do 4. So if they're going to expand to 16 and they're going to expect to do that anytime soon, I don't see that happening.
Now, do you think there is hundreds or thousands from the private sectors? And
Hundreds. It's not thousands. It's not thousands.
All of them American or from other countries, Latin, Colombia?
Well, so under UG Solutions, the UG Solutions part, the subcontract that I worked for, it's nearly all Americans, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 expats or dual citizens. But the other companies underneath Safe Reach Solutions, I'm not sure what their breakdown is, but I think that in some cases there are some of the truck drivers that drive some of the delivery trucks. I think some of them may be from other nations, but I can't confirm that. I didn't work for Arkel or Safe Reach Solutions, or really even for GHF directly. I was a subcontractor under UG Solutions specifically. So anything outside of that, I can't really say with certainty.
Okay, the contractors who provide the foundation or this criminal organization with the goods, with the so-called the bag, they come from the Israel or from Egypt, because there is an Egypt company called run by a figure working with the Egyptian regime, Al-Arjani, if you know him. This company has a bad reputation. They take millions from Gazans. When the Rafah border was opened, they charge 4,000, 5,000 beer head. Do you have information that the goods come from this company or other companies who supply these? They need a supplier on the end of the day too.
Yes, I was not able to ascertain who is the supplier, but to your point, when I first arrived there, everything seemed very opaque. There wasn't a lot of transparency in terms of how the funding was being done, where the aid was being come from. And I had asked, like, hey, when the aid is brought in and it's stored at Karim Shalom,
Yes.
where is that coming from?
From Egypt. I think Egypt.
Well, I don't know, because I'm sure some of it might, but I
Yes.
also personally saw that some of it comes into the port of Ashdod. So where it came into Ashdod, I don't know where it came from, but I'm sure that Egypt and others are contributing to that. I know that the GHF humanitarian aid. There is no GHF. GHF isn't a thing. GHF is not a real company. It's just a shell, and there is no GFH branded aid. All GHF does is take the aid from other providers, put it in their box, and put a GHF sticker on it, and that becomes GHF aid. So, where it's coming from, I can't say that with certainty, but I'm certain somebody can figure that out.
Yeah. My point is, in the absence of the United Nations agencies, the whole thing is about profits, trading in the agony, in the blood of the people. This is horrific.
Well,
crime.
the Safe Reach Solutions and UG Solutions are for-profit companies. That is a fact. They are for-profit. They are businesses, and
Yeah.
it was expressed to me once, and very clearly, because I had asked, why are we not providing them any water? How are we not providing water? One, you need water to survive, but two, all of the food that we're giving them, you cannot make it without water. So we're giving them food that they can't prepare without water, and we're not giving them water. How are we feeding them? How is that humanitarian? And I was told that, well, if we deliver water, because of the weight of water, we can only put so many pallets of water on one truck. So to get the equivalent of one truck of water, we could do 3 trucks of food, and it would be too expensive to do that much water. So what drives things? Cost and profit. So when you have a mechanism like the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, whose process is driven by the bottom dollar, that's not humanitarian. That's profit. So in my opinion, humanitarian assistance cannot be properly executed at the end of the barrel of a gun, or through a company that is seeking profit and bottom line income. Can't.
Other than the officials, the American officials who run this criminal organization, did you hear about another officials who are directors in the foundation?
So the only individuals that I'm aware of in the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, in the early days when it first stood up, was an individual named Jake Wood. I don't know him. I'm not familiar with him, but I do know that on the 26th of May, when we began distribution, it was our first day of distribution. Mr. Jake Wood stepped down from the foundation, stating that there was grave concerns with how this would be executed, being able to do it in a humanitarian, ethical way, and he stepped down on the 26th. So the person that replaced him is an individual named Mr. Johnny Moore, again, who I don't know, but from what I've read, doesn't seem to have a background in humanitarian assistance and humanitarian aid. So yeah, that's all I know. Like, in terms of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, I, as well as a lot of people, to include the U.S. Congress, know very little. We don't know where their funding is, who their backers are, who their sponsors are, who their investors are. We know none of that, and it really strikes me as concerning is that the United States Department of State gave them $30 million in taxpayers' money to continue to do something that is failing without accountability, without any transparency as to who they are, how they're operating, how they're using the money. It astounds me, and I really don't know why. And I hope that the international community demanding answers, I hope one day we get those answers, because it's really concerning to me how that came together in terms of the ideals of democracy, and we respect, rule of law and rule of the people, and yet we're doing this.
Sorry for this question. They pay for salaries on daily basis or monthly basis for with the people who work with them.
So our salaries were calculated on a daily basis, but we were actually paid every 2 weeks. So calculated daily pay and then paid every 2 weeks with that daily pay for 2 weeks.
Okay. The last question, did you know the fate of the prince?
The head of what?
The fate of the prince.
The fate of the
Abdul Rahim.
of the fate of Amir?
Yes, Amir, the prince.
Oh, the prince, the young boy.
Yes, yes.
I spoke to his mother, and she's been searching for him since the 28th of May, which is when I saw him. I spoke to her, and she had showed me pictures of him, and I showed her pictures that I had of him, and she has not seen him since
Yes,
the 28th, which is the last day I saw him. What I fear is that because in that area, again, what I've mentioned before is that in southern Gaza and the enclave, south of the Marag corridor, and then from where the Marag corridor is north into southern Khan Yunis and western Rafah, that's all heavy combat. That's heavy fighting. And every day after there's distribution where thousands of people on foot are walking through the sandy roads and making them very torn up, after the distributions, the IDF will come through with the bulldozers to resurface the roads. And it's my fear that there are many that have been shot and killed near or at the sites that are simply just buried in the rubble.
Yeah, they buried them now. There is reports they buried a lot of bodies. Hopefully they can find Amir, but I doubt it. This is a big tragedy. I'm telling you, it's this story moving a lot, millions around the world when you expose this story. It's very tragic. It's very unfortunate. Amir shouldn't be there. Should be in the school, should be playing, should be,
And what I want to emphasize to folks is that because I've seen people say things like, "Oh, well, one point he said shukran, another point he said thank you," and that must be made up. And what I've said is, when he came up to us, the gentleman, myself and the gentleman standing next to me, and he held our hand and he kissed our hand and he held it to his forehead. He looked at us and he said shukran in his language, shukran.
Yes, yes.
When I kneeled to him, and he put his hands on my face and he put his forehead to me and he kissed me. He said thank you. He said thank you in English. So people that say that, oh, well, Anthony said he said shukran, then he said thank you, and therefore maybe the story's not real. I would say listen to my testimony and what I'm saying in the humanity of this young child and his kindness and his true, genuine sincerity of thank you. He walked to get there, just to get there. And this is confirmed. This is not baloney. This is confirmed based on where his stepmother is and, showing where he lived. In order to get there, he would have walked over 8 kilometers.
Yeah.
He didn't go in a car. He wasn't on a bike. He walked, and he had no shoes. And his clothes were being held up his pants were being held up with a piece of twine. No telling when the last time he ate was. And when he got there, alone. His parents weren't there with him. He was separated from everybody. He was there by himself. And what he wanted to say to us, the Americans that were there in providing food, what he wanted to say to us was, thank you. Does that sound like a monster or Hamas, or that everybody in Gaza should die because they're all Hamas, whatever the narrative is?
This is the propaganda, my friend. The strategy, their strategy, the Zionist strategy, the propaganda, they want to take you to their direction. If you have a story, if you have an angle for a story, keep on your direction. Don't go to their direction. They want you to go their direction, to defend yourself, to defend. No, keep exposing them. Don't listen to them. It's not only Amir. if Amir's story moving a lot of people. They concentrate it on it. They know he is alive. No, they want to destroy your credibility, but they couldn't, because you talk about something horrible, something more than Amir. Hundreds have been killed, so they want to take you in other direction. Last thing, thank you very much. Thank you for your courage. If you want any help, any legal help, we are ready to help. And if you can help us also in anything in our cases, many thanks. Stay going, stay on your story, expose them. Don't fear anyone.
Thank you. And I will continue, because this is not my story. This is a story about this is human beings, regardless of what side you are on politically, or what your beliefs are, or who you are religiously or ethically. This is about human beings. This is humanity. This is not politics.
That's right.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Mr. Jamil, for your questions, and thank you, Anthony, for these answers. And I want to thank each and every one of you for taking part in this webinar today. It was very helpful and insightful and informative. And also thank you for everyone who was listening and watching. And thank you for your precious time, and see you in the next webinar, inshallah. So,
thank you. Thank you, Nader. Thank you for your... Thank you.
Thank you.